Okay, we are live, and this is the Synth Summit Show, episode 12. I am Flux of fluxwithit.com, your lovely, beautiful host. And here with me today, I have another supermodel, and that is Jesse McCreadie of Animodule. Animodule is a Eurorack manufacturer who basically specializes in making punk rock modules, modules that really have a ton of character. So we're going to kind of run the gambit of talking about the entire line and how he got started and basically give you the gist of what's going on in Animodule world. So Jesse, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, say hello.
Hi, I'm Jesse McCreadie. I'm with Animodule. Check out my modules at animodule.com.
So Jesse's video is pixelated basically because he's been in the witness protection program for the last, I guess, about 15 years now. So we're going to keep him pixelated so that people don't realize just how awesome he is. Just, or you can cross your eyes, and if you cross your eyes really hard, you'll be able to see him really clear. 4K video.
It's like one of those pictures that you stare into.
Yeah, it's a magic eye.
The magic eye. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I got the magic eye.
I'm gonna give a little bit of history on how I first came to know Animodule. Animodule, when I first started getting into Eurorack, I wanted to support with my hard-earned money somebody local, and I'm out here in Delaware, so I'm about 35 minutes or so from Philly, and I looked all around and I found this little company called Animodule, and they, at the time, I think you probably had about maybe 4 or 5 modules done that were up and rocking. He has a little monster VCO, the SOB filter, which was in one of its much earlier states, and what other modules do you have? Yeah, I think you had the scanner. And maybe quad comparator and logic object possibly. So I wanted to support somebody local, and I really hadn't seen a whole heck of a lot of Animodule around in the other shops and all. And I got to tell you, I'm really happy that I did, because the sound that I was personally looking for when I started my Eurorack was I wanted big beefy oscillators. I wanted that raw, more vintage kind of analog sound that wasn't, so pinned down. And with the little monster VCOs, I feel like that's exactly what I was getting out of it. I was getting like just a real beefy the square wave on it's awesome, because the pulse width is just
right, man.
Yeah, that thing just sounds awesome. And the SOB filter is just will scream your head off. So those were actually some of the first modules that I ever got in my rack, and I was pretty darn happy about that as well. And since then, I've come to grab quite a few of those. So Jesse, what I want to start from is how you got into making the modules, because I know that you had some 5U modules as well, right?
Yeah, I got probably from floor to ceiling 2 foot wide of 5U modules, cabinets full of them. But yeah, I started out manufacturing 5U modules, and man, the front panels they look so nice. They're anodized aluminum, but it was a hassle to get them made. It was I like the 5U. It's a nice. I like that chunk when you
put the 1/4 inch in.
Yeah, I love the quad. I've been playing guitar and playing bass my whole life. I'm used to the 1/4 inch cables. I'm like, what are you gonna do with that little 1/8 inch cable? I'll tell you what, you tie up your laundry with your 1/8 inch cable. I don't know, put it in your mother's dishwasher or something. I don't know what you do with an 1/8 inch cable. Just like the clunkiness of the tangibility of the 1/4 inch cables, yeah, and the space to work with on the MU. But
So the first modules that you came out with, were they actually commercially available 5U modules, and then you decided to go down to the Eurorack size just because I guess at that time that's when Eurorack was really just starting to kind of boom.
Yeah, Eurorack was just starting to get big, and you know, I came out of nowhere. Hey, I'm Animodule. Check out my MU modules. They ain't cheap, but they're fucking awesome. Oh yeah, they're not black either, and yeah, they didn't sell, and I had to put food in my cabinet. So I was like, okay, what? How's this work? Okay, that didn't work. I better hit the ground running. So Eurorack was it, man. And
so one really cool thing about your modules that really grabbed my attention early, and it might seem like a little thing to some people, but to me, there's something, like I said, it's very punk rock. The fact that the original panels were all like street signs. I love that.
Yeah, well, I was looking for the metal. I was like, how am I gonna do? How the hell do you make a Eurorack module? Okay, I finally figured this MU thing out. How the hell do you make a Eurorack module? I was like, well, I guess you start with a gauge of metal. Now I made my own. They weren't MU, they're 5U, but they were 2 inches wide because that's the size of the aluminum bars at the hardware store, and they were 1/8 inch, but I knew it was going to be a little thinner than that. And so, you know, I'm driving around in my truck, you see a street sign that had fallen. And so I'd run it up on my table saw and see if I could get it right. And yeah, it's about the same thickness. The white ones, the speed limit signs are about the same thickness as a Eurorack module. So
it worked out. And the cool thing about those is that you really don't have to worry about rack rash. If you're worried about rack rash, then Animodule's not for you.
Yeah, no fucking rack rash. And I got some rack rash on my module.
So, yeah. You went at it like from a really DIY route because so you were making your own PCBs by etching them on a CNC machine, right?
Well, yeah, the MU modules, I actually etched them by hand and I drilled them out. And what I learned from that is that I hate drilling PCBs. There's nothing nastier than a face full of fiberglass dust on a day like today, like a 95-degree day. So, oh man. So I was like, okay, I'll get the CNC mill. So I got one on eBay, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. Maybe I can cut maybe I can engrave the panels like from Panel Express, but I can't get the finesse like them. But I started messing around with engraving the PCBs, and yeah, that worked. So yeah, I didn't know anything about it.
I'm going to show people. I've got in my hand one of the early envelopes, so I'm going to kind of show people here. This is what one of those circuit boards look like, so you can kind of see, you know, how it was engraved, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, I figured out how to make them two-sided. That's it. I didn't have much cash, so I was worried about sending an order out of PCBs and having to be fucked up. It's let's see, I got the old SOB is engraved, but it's on the it's only one-sided. So
I have one of the old SOBs in my rack over here too, but I don't want to pull it out of the rack because I use it too much. Now that one was let's talk about the SOB filter for a minute, because that went through some different iterations. What's the design of the SOB first? Like, let's explain to people what type of filter design is it first.
It's a basic OTA. Well, the bare bones are a basic OTA based on an LM 13700,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty much, you know, it started pretty much right out of data sheet with a few tweaks, and just kept on tweaking it. It's like, okay, cool, filter, it was good. What do I want to do with this? So how is this going to stand out? And I guess by the time I had the MU one, I had the wave folder on the input. And I was like, and well, okay, now that's cool. I mean, the wave folder, it's just a single stage wave folder. It's just simple, but it adds a little sparkle to it. It adds, you know, I tried LEDs and diodes to give it clipping, but I didn't like that. That just sounded, it sounded too nasty. It wasn't like I wanted to be nasty, but
Nasty but usable.
yeah, have a little, exactly.
I'm showing people the picture of the latest version of the SOB now. So where did you come up with the idea that you decided you were going to give it the Vactrol input on it?
Well, I don't know. What it seemed like when I did the Eurorack version, it had the VCA on it, and that just ended up being pretty complicated. And maybe, you know, you keep your VCA separate from your filter. I was trying to find a way to modulate the wave folder, because it is really affected dynamically if you
send it that hot signal, then it folds more.
Yeah, if you change the levels of your signal, then it changes.
That's what I really noticed with it, is when I send it a hotter signal, that's when I get more folds and more a more interesting result out of it, and it's a little bit more subtle when I send it something softer.
Yeah, so if you can send it a wave, it will give you some of that classic wave folder sound instead of just doubling the harmonics like it does. But but that ended up not. I mean, it worked, but it didn't. It made the module bigger and more. It wasn't as elegant as I would like the SOB to be. So I pared it down and stripped it down, and I don't know. I started messing with the Vactrols, and it sounded really nice to be able to give it that little bing.
Yeah, the Vactrols also tend to have a really nice response on them, and I don't know if you still are doing this or not, but for the longest time, I think I lost him. I'm gonna send him the link again, but I think he just disappeared on me. So anyway, what I was saying is, and I'll get back into this when he gets back on here, is that the SOB filter, the Vactrols on there are hand rolled. So I'm gonna ask him when he gets back in, you know, if he's still hand rolling the Vactrols. Hang on one second. So yeah, he's been hand rolling the Vactrols, like dipping them in an epoxy and wrapping them, and you know, just basically building his own. So when you talk about from scratch, I mean, this thing is really, really from scratch and really hand built. The thing that I really am interested about the SOB is kind of the usage of the mixer part of it as well. So here he comes now. He's back in. See, I filled the time well. I feel like I should get kudos, or at least like 2 or 3 kudos. Not a whole lot. So
Kudos.
there he is. Yeah. See, I was filling the time while you were disappeared. You touched your computer when I told you not to, didn't you?
Well, it said something about a script, but I don't know. I hit the X and it all went to shit.
I told you, you touch it, it's gonna go down. Watch.
I knew better, but I had to fiddle with it.
So before you dipped out, I was trying to ask about the Vactrols, because I know that for a good long while you were hand rolling the Vactrols. I don't know if you still do that on the SOB, or
Yeah, absolutely. Because all the all the numbers, all the resistor numbers are set to the LED and photocell that I use.
okay.
So if I bought a different Vactrol, I would have to recalibrate everything.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the other thing about the SOB is that it has a mixer built into it, and one of the cool things that I found is that you can actually overdrive that mixer. So it's like you kind of have control of gain and like a sort of pre-filter distortion going on there as well with that mixer.
Well, it's you can drive the wave folder and you can drive the filter. So you're actually driving a filter. The mixer should be good as up to the rails. I mean, slightly under them, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're driving a filter. And that was one of the tweaks that I've balanced. I want you to be able to make it scream. I want you to be able to.
That's what I really like about it, is the way that, I've got quite a few filters in my rack, and man, I tell you, people ask me like, "Oh, what's your favorite filter?" And every time I still go back to the SOB, and it's got that character, is the best way that I can say it. Like I have issues with certain filters that I feel like lack balls and lack character to them. The SOB is the one that, to me, is like, when you say, "Oh, I want a filter that has a ton of character," that's like the first thing I think of. I'm like, well, you want an SOB then, because that thing colors your sound in a really interesting way. You can decide how hard you want it to be driven and how much of that character you want in there. You can make the resonance when you get it self-oscillating and you get the resonance really screaming. You can really kind of tailor it in interesting ways, and the Vactrol is just stupid amounts of fun. Like the Vactrol, because it's like it has its. I don't know what the curve is as far as like, how you're deciding how much it's getting for that Vactrol to open up the frequency cutoff. But man, it's like, it's just musical. Like, it's really fun to just ping it with little gates and things, and just kind of, and you also have the CV input and the volt per octave input. So you can kind of like have multiple modulations all going at one time. And then you have the wave folder, which, to be honest with you, I use the wave folder on like kick drums as a distortion on the kick drums a ton. It just sounds badass. So, I mean, that to me is like, when I think about the SOB, I'm like, character. You know what I mean?
I know exactly. That's what I was going for. That's especially with the Low Monster and the SOB. I was, they're sort of my flagship modules. I wanted something. That's what I'm on the same page. I want something with character. I want something that screams, man. But with the SOB, it was real important that you could dial it back and get that creamy, classic sound as well. So yeah, I mean, it's very dynamic. It can change a lot just by attenuating your input signal, which is why the attenuators and the mixer was so important. And the wave folder adds another dimension that you can drive that, or you can just put it up, give it a little kiss with the wave folder, just add a little sparkle to your sound. It adds harmonics to your triangle. I'm enamored with the triangle wave, right? But triangle, I hate the fucking flute. I mean, that's not true. I don't hate a flute, but you don't see any flutes lying around here. I'll tell you that much.
I hear you. You're not Ron Burgundy up on top of the table.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I'm gonna jump like crazy far forward now. So Animodule's been around for a while now, and a lot of the newer modules that you're doing you're getting into some digital modules now. And some of the cool things that you've done, and one of the coolest is the new MIDI gate module. And I want to dive into that. The MIDI gate module, for those that don't know, I'm gonna pull up an image of it here so that people can see it as well. Basically, it's a you send a DIN plug into this bad boy, and you got a whole bunch of them over there. So you send a MIDI DIN cable into this thing, and what you're going to get out of it is 10, I believe it's 10, right? 10 gate outputs.
Yeah, 10 gate outputs.
And they're all mapped to like the first octave on a keyboard. So, which is generally speaking about where your drum maps are. And it's really easy.
C1 to A1 or
what I've been using it for a lot is I use it as an expander to the Arturia beat step, or I use it as an interface from like my Native Instruments machine, my MPC, or my Tempest to add drum outputs from any drum sampler, any drum sequencer,
That's what
I'm gonna share the image of this thing so that people can see what the hell I'm talking about. But yeah, so this is it here, and it's a you just throw the DIN plug in the bottom there, and you've got instant gate outputs there. Can't be easier to map this thing up on any one of your, any type of software or hardware drum sequencer that's worth its salt is going to be able to map to this thing, and it gives you gate outputs of everything. So it's awesome for instead of having to have something large like a BeatStep Pro, which is cool, you can do this thing which actually has more outputs than the BeatStep Pro does. So tell me a little bit about why you decided to make this thing.
I did some videos. I had this MIDI box, CV MIDI to CV converter, and I found one of the coolest, most useful things I did with it. I was making videos of drum voices, and I was like, wow, this is cool, man. This is handy. You're playing live drums on your pads. This is pretty much how I record stuff, is with the MPC and the modular synth and maybe a keyboard or something. So, but that was big, man. I had it in one of my old 5U setup, and I'm like, where do I put this? I don't know where to put this, but I gotta have it. And so I shrunk it on down. I said, let's strip out all the extra stuff, and you just got the 10 gate outputs and the MIDI input. You don't have to program anything. There's no screens. It's 4 HP, so it's little. And then you just plug I plug my MPC in, or my SR16, use an old drum machine, an old Boss drum machine that's sitting in the corner collecting dust because you already sampled it, or your interface with your DAW or your machine. Like I don't generally use a computer for music very often, but it's pretty much just to upload stuff. But I imagine people that do want to be able to that would be
definitely
huge.
A cool way to use something like if people have an analog rhythm, if they have a Tempest, if they have any kind of drum sequencer and they want to interface it with their Eurorack. Most of those things don't have gate outputs on them, and this basically gives you gate outputs to anything that any sequencer that you're using, which is cool because it also opens the door to using way cheaper products for doing that, because you can even use like an iPad, and then all you need is one of those MIDI to USB cables.
Right.
You can interface with, there's like Beatmaker 2, Beat Hawk, MPC software on there, machine software on there. There's all kinds of weirdo different sequencing things that you can do, and you can just basically do all your drum programming and send it to a Eurorack modular system through this module, which is pretty awesome. What's the price on that thing?
$169.99.
So dirt cheap, basically.
yeah, as cheap as I can make them, man.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And I mean, you compare that to like, basically anything else that's out. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So some of the other modules that are digital that get into that kind of drum aspect of the world would be the what's it called, the gate mod.
TikTok gate mod.
Yeah, the gate mod is cool, man. So with that, you can do. So you've got the gate mod, and then also along with that, I also would mention that you have the TikTok, which shout out to Div Kid, Ben Hex. He just did a video on the TikTok also. So, and I think I have a video on the TikTok as well on my channel. TikTok is a clock divider and clock multiplier, which is pretty awesome because you get both. And if you're slightly Arduino savvy, I mean, I guess you could manipulate it yourself as well.
Yeah, it'd be easy enough to change the numbers on it.
And I think you would even mention to me that, like, you know, if people were really needing a specific set of outputs, like that they could probably request it from you, and you could help them out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely right, because it's a 2 through 6 on each divide. The divisions are 2 through 6, and then the multiplications are 2 through 6. So I got one with like 7, 9, 12, and 16 on it. It probably has 8 in there too.
But yeah, basically what I was saying is that you've got you got this MIDI gate module, and if you want, you could dedicate a channel on it to basically sending clock.
Just your clock, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can tie that up with a TikTok, so then you get divisions, and then you hook that up with a gate mod. The gate mod is really cool. It's this really kind of quirky module, because what it'll do is it can allow you to do like real interesting syncopation. That's how I use it mostly, is for syncopation stuff. So basically you can send it a clock input or a gate input, and then with the attenuator on it, you can delay when the next output will be and how long that output will be, right?
Yeah, and you can even control the gate length via CV. And then after that gate is done firing, there's a 10 millisecond trigger for that it ends. And then the next channel is normal to that. So it goes gate length, done, boom, trigger, second channel fires, and then it's the same thing till that trigger goes. So yeah, so you can do syncopation with that. The idea with that was the multiples on TikTok I have them set for 10 milliseconds. And I mean, that's great for a trigger, but if you need a gate out of that, that's not going to cut the mustard. And sometimes you want a gate if you're going to fire the Vactrol on SOB for a sequence. So
let me just also on that same topic, I'll kind of I'll give another option for doing a similar thing. That is also another one of your products that I use a ton, and that would be well, actually 2 different products: the Logic and the Quad Comparator. Now I use the Quad Comparator a lot for like conversions. So the Quad Comparator is cool because, you know, you can use it as a comparator and, you know, do all the typical things of like sending, you know, triangle waves into it and getting interesting sounds out of it that way. But what I tend to use it more for is more as a utility module to convert triggers into gates, or which it'll do that. Like if you send it like really short pulses, you know, it kind of will adjust to that. And then you can set the attenuator on it. And depending on where you set the attenuator on it, sometimes you'll get longer and sometimes you'll get shorter. If you're sending it pulse waves and square waves, you know, depending on where the pulse is and depending on where you set the attenuator, you can get actually from one square wave, you know, from one pulse wave, you can get multiple different outputs that are staging at different points in the wave. You know, yeah. So that's how I use it a lot of the time. And I'll get like these weird kind of like almost like waterfall type effects out of it by just setting them offset just a little bit, and like a pulse wave will come across it, and then they're all set slightly different, and
so like a frog, like one of those
trail right down it. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
Capybara or
yeah. Cassava.
There's a sample name for it. I don't think I ever seen one. Maybe in like kindergarten where you got the stick in the little thing.
So I was actually talking to a good friend of mine, William McKnight of Sonic Expansion, who he recently came out with a bunch of new sound packs over at machinemasters.com, and we're working on some joint products that'll be coming out soon. So self-plug, shameless as all can be.
Check them out.
But no, so I was talking to him the other day, and whenever I mention Animodule, both him and Corey from B-Boy Tech Report, the first things out of their mouth is, yeah, he's that's the utility module king right there. And it's true. Like, it's funny because I don't tend to think of it that way, because when I think of Animodule, the first thing that snaps to my mind is the LMVCO and the SOB filter. But for those guys, the first thing that comes to mind is the line amp, which I was lucky enough to kind of work on a little bit with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, that sprung from your idea, man.
So the line amp, the Logic Ogic, the quad comparator, what else do we got? The gate mod, the mixer, Mixman, Tranimodule, like all these things are interesting modules in ways of utilities. So that's where they kind of all stem out, and they're like, oh yeah, utility king. So the
I'll take it. I'll wear it with pride, man.
I'm gonna put it really bluntly. Some of those modules, people might jump out and be like, oh well, that's like the boring, non-sexy part of your rack.
Yeah, that's the utility king. Fuck. Well, hey, man, you know what? That's the stuff you need. You can get so many more miles out of a mixer than you can. Well, maybe not another oscillator, but I mean, the newest fancy module, you need a mixer for it. You need attenuators for your gate mod, man. You need dividers and multiples to get all the crazy stuff you want to do. It's
well, I'll tell you. Let me break down just a couple of interesting aspects of the things that most people would think is just like, oh, it's a normal module, right? So the mixer, right? And I guess I should pull it up on the screen here. The mixer is something that, in my opinion, should have existed a while ago and didn't. That
was from your idea too, Ken.
It's one of those things that it's like, it's so brutally simple but so useful and comes in handy. Now, this basically gives you it's a four input mixer, right? But what it also is it gives you an individual attenuated output for each input, and it gives you gate control over muting, all right? So you can actually send this thing 4 channels, but then be sending it gates to mute, to turn those channels on and off. And on top of that, you could send it clock to step through, right?
That's where it gets fun, man. That's one of the most fun modules.
And then on top of that, you've got offset of that clock. So you can actually, in the same vein of the V9A sequencer that you have, you've got this clock input where you can decide how much of the clock you want to use, and it doesn't have to be a clock. It can be a waveform. It can be, you can send it rising waves, and by setting the step offsets and the attenuator for the CV input, you can get sculpted waves into this thing that will sequence when your channels come on and off, which is crazy. And then on top of that, you got push button muting, so you can just jab it and like shut channels on and off, which is how I use it a lot too, because I do a lot of my drums through my Euro rack, and with this thing I can just tap a channel, shut it on and off, right?
Well, that's how it went down. You're like, you know what I need? I need a module with switches that you can switch the channel on and off. I mean, gate inputs. I was like, oh, yeah, and a sequencer. It needs a sequencer.
And a sequencer.
Yeah. If you got a sequencer, you got to be able to send a clock and CVs. Yeah, I was building it. I ordered the PCBs. I was like, oh my God, what the fuck did I just? and then I tried it. I was
module.
like, oh my God, this is so much fun.
In my opinion, this is one of the most slept on modules that's out there right now, because it, like, just from the layman's perspective, they might look at it and be like, oh, you know, it's such a basic thing, you know, and oh, that's the same as any mixer that's out there. But really, it's not at all. Like, and not only that, you also have a little LED that tells you when the module's on and off. So it's not like you're just guessing by trying to, is that thing pushed in or not, you know? So in a live performance aspect, this module is like gold, you know? Like, I mean, when you're using this thing, you can just easily mute channels in and out. Just recently, I did a video for the Ian Fritz SynthCube Thriller VCF. Right. And throughout the video, you know, I'm basically turning the module, you know, on and off, like the self-resonance of it. I was shutting it on and off by just using the mixer. It's such a simple thing that people don't really think of, but it's like, you know, you have it on every I'm going to say Eurorack mixer, but I'm talking Behringer Eurorack. You know what I mean? Like every regular format mixer outside of the actual Eurorack, you have mutes, but in modular world, they're kind of few and far between. And the amount of HP that you have to use up to get them tends to be a little bit excessive. So it's like this module comes so much in handy. And the fact that you can send it waveforms to sequence bringing things in and out of a mix is crazy to me, you know?
That's one of the things. That's what takes it from being a mixer utility module and makes it so much fun, man. That's I mean, it's seriously one of the most fun modules that I've used. It's well, you send it clock and you send it a slow triangle, and it's boom boom boom. It's clocking down and then stepping down according to the to where the CV is as well. It's
one of those modules that no matter what you're doing, it'll always be useful in your rack. You know what I mean? Oh, and the other thing is that you can send DC through it, so you can use it to send modulation, and then you can sequence which modulation is coming through at what time, and then you can attenuate how much modulation you're getting out of it, which is crazy.
Right. Well, that's one thing I want about. I'm pretty adamant about my modules that there's always, it's never just going to be sitting in your rack taking up space. There's always something you'll be using it for.
It's multiple uses. And getting to that same point, I'm gonna hop back. I'm on the Animodule website so people can actually see all these modules up here. So the other quote unquote boring module that I'm bringing up that I'm like emphatic about is the Mixman, which is another mixer module, but the Mixman is crazy. Like, people don't like. I took a Mixman out of my rack the other day, right? Because I was like, oh, I got too much modules in here, so I took it out, and I swear within like 15 minutes of patching, I was fiending for it. I was getting so angry because I needed like the little stuff. I didn't need the mixer at that point, but I needed the offsets, and I was like,
God. Offset the mult on there.
So the Mixman. The reason why I bring this up, and people are like, oh God, he's talking about a mixer. Like, what the hell? So I'm not even talking about the audio aspect of it, which the audio aspect is cool because you can make this thing overdrive. You can do some cool stuff with it. But so you've got the invert on it, which is super useful, it's just a simple invert, right? But on top of that, you got this offset at the bottom here, right? Which is its own individual offset. All right. So you can just send DC voltages, positive and negative, through this. So you can control, you know, your filter cutoffs, anything that doesn't have a knob that should have a knob, you can control with it, which is cool. And then on top of that, you can also use it to, you know, basically rectify things and, you know, bring things positive and negative, which is cool. But also the actual mixer section, if you don't plug into the first part of the mixer, the rest of the mixer becomes an offset also.
Well, it's the third channel. The offset is normal to the switch on input jack of the third channel. So if you don't have anything plugged into that third input, and you have the attenuator turned up, you're going to get that offset in your mix. Just like the entire mix is normal to the switch on the input of the invert.
Yes. So you can actually, so if you don't plug anything into the invert, you can plug into the output of the invert, and you get everything from your mix inverted, which is awesome. I mean, like,
that's where the offset
these
really
are like little things, but when you look at this mixer, some people might say, oh, well, you know, the other mixers in the same HP are all four input mixers or whatever, you know, aside from a CVP, I think. But, you know, they might be saying, oh, well, if I just buy a regular 4-input mixer, I'm going to get more for my money out of it. You're really not. Like, if you got to look at all the hidden features that are on this thing, and then this thing gives you way more for your dollar than just about anything else that I'm seeing out there. And I'm looking at the price on your page, and I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, it's $104.99 right now, which I'm kind of a, like, people can yell at me because I kind of yell at Jesse. I'm like, yo, you need to raise your prices, because I tell him this all the time. I'm like, dude, you need to raise your prices, because this stuff is so ridiculously useful. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, people need to be aware of what's actually inside of these modules. I mean, how much this Mixman can do. Name any other module for $100 that's going to do that. I guarantee you can't.
I got 4 of them in my 12U cabinet right now, and in a little patch, it looks like 3 of them are getting used for something.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. It's like, I have 3 Mixmans, and I get angry when I take one out. Like, if I have to lose one to gain some space, I get irritated, because I'm like, damn, I literally need that functionality. So the mixer I had to put in the rack. Like, I use it too much because it's got all that other functionality, but it doesn't have the offset functionality that the Mixman has. So, like, I'm constantly, like, fighting with myself, but it's back and forth.
That's what the man is. It's a manipulator. It's your control voltage manipulator. It's the mixer and the manipulator. I mean,
it's one of the things. It's like, again, it's like, it's the boring side of your rack, but it's so useful. It's like, dude, if you're building a rack, you have to think about this kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, you know? Well, exactly. It's all stuff you need, or else you're not gonna optimize your beefy, sexy modules. You want to start mixing oscillators, and
I'll talk about one other so-called boring module just real quick, okay? And that's the double D VCA, right? Then I'm just going to bring up some minor things about the double D VCA, okay? Because everybody always says you can never have enough VCAs, and I thoroughly agree. Double D VCA does a couple of really cool things that, for one, it sounds good, all right? Which not all VCAs sound good. I'll be dead honest. One of the reasons that it sounds good is the fact that it actually has both an input attenuator on it, so you can actually set your level going through the damn thing, which not all of them have that, and that kind of irritates me. You've got your modulation attenuator, so you can decide how ruckus it gets, and then you've got your offset, and with that you can do crazy stereo, like crossfading basically with it, or panning back and forth through different signals. So
because the modulation input is buffered, then inverted, then it goes to the modulation input on the second channel. It's normal to the modulation input on the second channel.
It's normaled and inverted.
It's buffered, then inverted, and then normal. Yeah.
It's like, get in there real deep, like.
So when your wave's going up, the second VCA is getting quiet, and when your CVs are going down, the second VCA is getting loud again.
Exactly. So I use that thing for fading between different oscillators and kind of getting like not just stereo, but just like actually, because a lot of my patches, even though they could be stereo, I'll keep them mono, but I'll use it to like fade between signals and that sort of thing. But that's one of the modules that, like, when people ask me about different VCAs, I'm like, look, it takes up a little bit more HP than some of the, because some people want those really small VCAs.
Yeah, you get 4 VCAs and 4 HP or something.
Yeah, and that's cool. I mean, like, there's a point to that,
Oh yeah, I can't knock that, man. It's
but for the most part, for all of the ones that I've used that are really small like that, none of them have given me the same type of sound quality and versatility. You know what I mean? Like you just don't get, because if I am doing that, then I still have to use attenuators outside of it, which ends up taking up HP anyway. So it's like, are you really saving space?
You need an attenuator on the input of your VCA, or some way to attenuate it. I mean, there's some, especially if you want to use it for control voltages and do fancy stuff that you want a VCA for, instead of just your open and close it after you filter.
Can we talk a goofy module that to me, I have a love-hate relationship with it, and that's the V9A. So I'm going to bring the V9A up.
That's one weird module.
So the V9A is a sequencer, right? And it also does trigger output. But the reason why I say I have love-hate on it is because, to me, and this might not be intended usage, so I don't know, but for me, this actually, I used to have a Turing machine that was fully expanded, and I got rid of it when I got the V9A, because the Turing machine for me was like my random source, and I was using it for some interesting things. I found that the V9A gave me kind of a random source, but it was a little bit more controllable at the same time, and that's how I tend to use it. I like to use it for I send it different like manipulated waveforms, and then use that as a sequencer, and then I just kind of play with the knobs on it and kind of go from there. So what was your thinking when you originally created this thing? Because it is a pretty odd sequencer, and you can kind of describe what the functionality is there.
Well, it's a voltage controlled sequencer. There's no clock input, so you don't have to play it linearly. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's wherever your voltage is. You can hook it up to a sample and hold and jump around any one of the 9 steps, and you have a set. And so you can get, you set them to what's a scale or something like that. You've got room to play, or you hook it up to a CV to MIDI converter or something, and you're not stuck in a linear sequence. Now, you can also use it as a wave shaper. You send a triangle wave in, or a saw wave or something, and you set the voltages out on each of the different step, and as your saw is going up, you can have it going all over the place. However you see fit. You can use it as a multiplier. You can use it, send the saw wave in or a triangle wave in, and pull your triggers from the trigger out. That's a lot of times how I'll get my eighth note timing for something that I only have, one trigger gate per bar.
Yeah. So one of the cool things about this is that it's got slew. So you can decide, you can actually hit these push buttons on this thing and decide which step will fire a trigger output. And then you also have push buttons to decide which step will slew. So you can kind of do like those weird acid bass lines, and like you could kind of use it as like a It's almost like a TB-303 sequencer, Zoxbox sequencer on like tons of acid, like just massive amounts of hardcore hallucinogenics.
That's a little on the nose.
Right? Exactly. Because when you're shooting at waveforms, and you adjust the offset, just like what we were talking about for the mixer, you can adjust the offset and everything, and kind of decide what section of the waveform you really want to grab from. And you can make this thing just kind of like, you can make it kind of slowly step through things. You can make it jump from step 1 to step 9 really fast. You can make it jump from step 1 to step 3. You know, like you can, depending on how you
2 waves together and sort of oscillate between your sets of
exactly
steps.
so for me, it was like I was using the Turing machine and I had it fully expanded, which I don't think they had the bytes expander at the time, but I had everything else. And I was using the Turing machine a lot, but I still felt like I want random, but I want a little bit of control of that random, like a little bit more than that. And that's kind of where I found myself with the V9A. Like, I don't use it in any way, shape, or form as a traditional sequencer. Like, that's not what I'm looking for when I'm using it. Like, I don't send it like perfect sine waves, which you can do. You can send it like a perfect sine waves, and you'll get these steps through it. You know,
That's how I end up using it most of the time. Is I just send it a triangle wave, or I send it a ramp
or a
wave.
saw wave. Yeah. Like if you send it a saw wave, it'll step through like that. But that's not how I tend to use it. What I found is, like 9 times out of 10, what I like to do is I like to have kind of weird waveforms flowing through it, and then just like capture sections of it, and like that's my random. You know what I mean? That's that kind of weirdo selection of voltages that I'm shooting out to things. And then with the slew, I'll like kind of randomly like live punch those in and out, and that gives me like this kind of like just funky real-time vibe. You know what I mean? So like you can actually kind of real-time play the random that you're getting from it, which is cool. Definitely a strange module.
That's it. I figured it's so strange. It's a lot. You know, I when I make module, I try and think beyond what I can think of too, because I know there's some strange users out there, man. Which, thank God, bless them. Honestly, is the last synth me over at Tattooed Moms, Ben Solar started playing with it. He sent a triangle wave into the V9A. He sent the V9A output to the input of the SOB, and then he fed the resonance back into it or something. And it sounded like it was screaming as the fabric of space and time was ripping. It was, I mean, he just looked at it and went, and it went,
So getting back to how you decide to make modules, and basically your end game on this thing, as far as how you're doing things. So you're a one-person shop, right? Like it's all you come up with the ideas and then you make them, right? What are some things that you're
planting the seed for, man?
Well, I'm basically just an a-hole who tries to be selfish as possible and say, hey, I would really like this. Any chance?
me too. That's how I say I want this.
I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. So let me ask you something. So I know that these days you're rather busy being a solder monkey. But what are some of the modules and things that interest you? Like what are some of the things that get you excited?
I'm enamored with Logic, sequencing somewhat, but more how that ties in with Logic and like wave folding. I don't know, man. Something really jangles me with that. You know, it's just coming up with some cool polyrhythm from some crazy Logic patch out of simple Logic gates. You patched up really fires me up, and maybe it's because I'm a terrible musician I mean, that's, I just guess that's subject speculation, but
as we all have to deal with.
it's, but I'll tell you, the triple XOR, man, has got to be one of my favorite modules. But it's like, it sounds so boring when you explain it. So was an analog exclusive OR. When one wave goes high, the other inverts, and has gate outputs and an analog output, and the channels are normal to each other. And I just put myself to sleep. But I use it in every patch because, I mean, even if it's just a gate multiple, I'm sending two waveforms and they fuck each other up, and it sounds crazy badass. So, and you got all the logic configurations on it. It's
I just pulled up the Logic here for people to take a look at it. You don't have much of a oh, this is just, I'm sorry, don't look at the price on here, people. That's just for the PCB set. If you want to buy that, you can certainly buy that. This is not the completed module. I'm just showing this to show the picture. But the Logic is one of those things that people who are really in the know about modular, they know that you got to have one of these modules in your rack just because of how much it can do. There's really not a lot of Logic modules out there that will do as much as this in this kind of HP. So basically, I mean, you can use this thing for doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Everything from like flip-flops to comparators to what's the other thing? And/or.
Ands and ors. It's got an inverter and a buffer.
Hold on.
I think that was the first module I released.
Let me pull up this other module. I know that I pulled this up, but I got to pull this up because this is one of those things that like I champion personally, because I think not a lot of people know about why this is important to have in your rack. But I gotta say, if you own a BeatStep Pro, if you own if you want to do the MIDI gate and use a drum sequencer or whatever, if you don't also have a triple exclusive OR, you're insane, because this will allow you to do things with your drum pads that you just simply can't do. Like Jesse knows that, like, I had a conversation with him about this. I guess it was a couple months ago or a month ago or whatever. But basically, so there's a bunch of modules out there, a bunch of drum modules out there that will allow you to do things like choke, or will allow you to open aspects of the module. But you're still sending it a gate at the same time, right? So things like the Orgon accumulator, the audio damaged neuron is what I use this in conjunction with more than anything. So with this module, you can send two gates into it, right? And then you can allow it to output a singular gate that's also doubling at the same time. Like, how should I explain this, Jesse? I'm trying to explain this to the people as to why this will allow you to do open and closed hi-hats or snares and rim shots, from one single pad or from two pads on your drum controllers without having to use multiple modules. You can still use one module that can be modulated in multiple ways, but the triple exclusive OR is what will allow you to do that.
I forget how we worked that out, but it was
so we send a gate into A, and then we send a gate into B on the second channel. And that will allow us to get an output from the analog and gate out of the top one and out of the bottom one. And then out of the bottom one,
because the first channel is normal to the second channel.
Yeah. So this thing will allow you to basically choke and do do a lot of cool things with your drum pads that otherwise you just wouldn't be able to do. Like if you are like me and like to live perform, I do a lot of finger drumming. But lately I've been wanting to do more than just finger drumming on machine and finger drumming on the MPC. I've been wanting to finger drum my actual modular. And in order to do that, the only way to do that without using an individual module per pad, which even if you did that, then you still have to deal with the choking aspect of it, which you'd have to multiply and then send out, you know.
Once you get that long,
like modules like the Audio Damage Neuron, which I try to recommend to everybody. The Audio Damage Neuron is a digital FM drum synthesizer module, but it's got a choke input on it, an accent input on it, and then it's also got inputs for each individual characteristic of the module. So you can open and close the envelopes. So if you're doing a hi-hat with it, you can open and close the hi-hat. Well, the only way you're going to be able to do that from using two pads but still trigger the same thing is to use a triple exclusive OR. Technically a double exclusive OR, but the module gives you 3 of them, so you still have an extra. But like, again, it's one of those boring utility modules that if you don't have it, you can't do everything that you could be able to do with your system.
Well, you know? One of the sexy part about the triple XOR though is that it works in the analog domain as well. So you can send audio into
That's what I first started using it as.
Audio analog, or yeah, it's an analog exclusive OR too. So when you know your two waveforms are high, it inverts. So
let me explain to people about why you're foolish. On your website, I'm looking at the triple exclusive OR, and you don't have my video demo of using audio through it.
That is foolish. That's just,
that. So yeah, I use it as a distortion. I use it as a distortion a lot of the time. So if again, this gets back to that whole, you know, if you're not using the module in one way in your rack, you can use it in a different way. So when I'm not doing drum sequencing, I use it as a distortion. Like I'll send it, you know,
that's nice trick to drum.
Just send it a free running oscillator and then send it, like I'll do, again, like I use my Eurorack not just in the Eurorack domain. Like I'll use my Eurorack along with my machine and my MPC and my Ableton Live and, you know, Studio One and all that stuff. I'll send audio mixes into the triple exclusive OR, and then I'll send like a free running oscillator through it also, and you'll get these crazy distortions through it, and then I'll pitch that oscillator too, like, as you know, along with key changes, and you can get really, really crazy. You can get key changed and pitch tracked distortion through that thing, which is really crazy. Like, I mean, that's just nuts. The fact that you can do that kind of stuff, which again, it's one of those modules that if you look at it, you know, and if you're on, you know, Perfect Circuit or Analog Haven or Foxtone or whoever you're using, you might be looking at this and being like, oh, why am I going to buy this? I could buy another oscillator.
I guarantee you'll go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
I guarantee you will never let it part from your rack.
It's such a boring module, but if you actually play with it, then you're like, holy shit, like, how did I not have this before? Well, the fact of the matter is most of the synthesizers, most of the drum machines that you already buy that are in a box, you know, that you have, they have these exclusive ORs built into the circuitry of them. You just don't know about it. You know what I mean? This is like if an oscillator, you know, was never named an oscillator and you didn't know about it, you wouldn't know that you needed it. Well, this is one of those things that it might not be talked about, but you freaking need it, you know? So, I mean, these are all modules that, to me, people should be a little bit more aware of. It's really hard to do a good demo video to get people excited of this kind of stuff, because it's such, like, you know, I don't want to say esoteric, but I just want to say it's like something that's not necessarily audio. It's just ways of making things happen in your modular that make sense, you know?
well, it leaves a lot of room for creativity. I mean, it's a palette right there for if you can see what to do with it, you can do a whole bunch of crazy stuff with it.
Yeah,
But
exactly, exactly. And it just it gives you an opportunity to do a whole lot more, you know, with what you already have, which is great because most of these things are all priced ridiculously cheap, you know. I mean, these modules aren't exactly priced as high as I personally feel like they should be. Um, just because I know the kind of work that goes into these things. But like, the quad comparator for $151, and it's a comparator where you've got 4 channels that you can set, where it's going to cross over at and that kind of thing. I mean, like, nobody's selling modules that cheap. Come on, man. What's wrong with you?
well, man, that's one of the coolest. I have some of the coolest conversations from the quad comparator. Some of the coolest people have the neatest ideas about how to use the quad comparator. So one guy sent me an email and he's like, I want to play my saxophone into this module and I want it to trip at different volumes.
Yeah.
I said, you can do that. You can do that. And he got it in the, he's dealing with audio range. I think this was before I put the line at, but the line.
Yeah, it definitely was because I kind of remember hearing about this.
Yeah, I was excited about it, and he sent it back to me, and I made the threshold a little tighter, so they had a little less play in it, and decibel wise.
I think that's something worth noting really quick. Not to interrupt you, but just people should recognize that you're accessible. Okay. So that if you are curious about the Animodule products and you want to talk to Jesse, give him a shout out. I mean, you can reach him on Facebook. You can reach him through the Muffwiggler forum, which again, shout out to muffwiggler.com forum because that is just a great forum. And I'm a big fan of Mike McGrath. He's a good friend.
He's going to be doing a drawing. He's going to be doing a drawing shortly.
Exactly. That's what I was just about
to from us, and you can win a MIDI gate.
Yeah. So, and I donated to that as well. So people can actually become a guest on this show. By winning, you can guest star on as a co-host or whatever you want to do. Like, depends on how comfortable people are on camera. Some people don't want to be on camera. Some people do. But if they want to just come in and ask questions, they can pixelate their camera if they want to. Whatever they want to do, I'm fine with it. But yeah, that and some drum packs. But I just want to say that you are accessible. You're open to the idea of, hey, if you want to tailor make a module, or like if you need just a little aspect of a module tweaked here and there, you're open to that idea, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Or you got any questions? You got a little to say the module's almost just what you need, but you want it to be a little more this, or you need it to be a little more that, then let me know, and I want you to be happy. I stand behind my modules, man. If I got a module, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So, it's for a lot of things, it's not difficult to just tweak it a little bit to get it right where you need it.
Exactly.
So give me a shout. Psycholabs@animodule.com or Muffwiggler or Facebook.
Exactly.
My website, there's a contact button, animodule.com. Just give me a shout, and I'd love to chat.
So I think this is a good place to kind of come towards an end. I just want to bring up just a couple other quick things about this. So again, I'm gonna run down a list of a few different things that I think are interesting that I think people should be aware about. Okay, the Animodule. Okay, now the Animodule is interesting because first off, it's got transvestite, transsexual vampires from Transylvania on the front panel. Not officially, of course, but they're on there. And I'm actually a Rocky Horror Picture fan, so I noticed that right away.
I saw the face, man. I've been dying to make a module with a face. This one has the grates for the speaker, and bam, there's your face.
So what am I gonna do? Whenever I tell people, it's really great because whenever I tell people about how much I love this module, they're all like, "Wait, what's the name?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's the Animodule." And they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's the Animodule, man." I'm like, "Yeah,
amplifier. It's a 1 watt transistor.
I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it's got the vampire lips and everything." I'm like, "Check it out," you know. And that it gets back to that whole character. It gets back to that whole aspect that the modules all have character to them, not just audibly but physically.
Yeah, the module has some character.
The reason why I'm bringing this up is because so something's really cool about this is so obviously it has a speaker built into it. So if you're doing like a modular meet, if you're doing a modular on the spot, which is getting really big right now, if you're doing any of those things and you just want to have a speaker output, you have a speaker output on it. But that's not the big deal to me, right? That's really cool to have. But the big deal to me on it is, one, you've got the line input like the line amp, so you can bring line level signals up to modular levels, which is cool. And then the other thing is that you can use the speaker as a load, so you can get a really interesting distortion out of this thing. The distortion on this is super usable. Yeah, it's super usable. I mean, like I use it for in a weird way. What I use is my my Fender Rhodes. I'll send my Fender Rhodes through this thing, and it's like, it's really crazy. Like, it just gives you this crazy round distortion out of it, this thumpy kind of distortion, which is cool.
That sounds like it would sound badass, yeah.
Yeah. I'll send you some. I gotta send you some audio because I'm actually working on a new sound pack for my website. That's basically a lot of stuff going through the Animodule and a couple other things, but
Nice.
The Animodule distortion is something that people should be aware of because that sucker, it's like it distorts, but it distorts in like not the way that, you know, some things will.
It's not. It doesn't just clip. It rounds it off because it's that transistor distortion. It's not just.
It's that round flavor to it. So it doesn't just distort in a way that's just like, oh, okay, it's distortion, or it's overdrive. It more saturates. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it adds a couple harmonics to it. It's
yeah, it works out really nicely. So because I remember when you were working on that thing, you were working to try to figure out what speaker would work best on it, and you were kind of debating on using that speaker. You were like, oh, use a little bit more amperage, you know, on the case, but the sound is really good. And I did a video showing it. And if you watch that video, you'll be like, damn, that's a really full sound. All that was a simple condenser mic like what I'm using right now. And I just placed it right up to the module. And you get this big, beefy sound out of it. So that's kind of like the third distortion that you can get out of it is when you, if you mic up that module, you get this crazy fat sound out of it as well, which is, you know, people probably might not think of that, but dude, mic that module up and you'll be surprised at how thick it sounds, you know?
Well, it was important to me to be able to get some nice drive out of it. You can also get a clean sound out of it. It's not going to give you the most bass in the world. You can get bigger speakers and you run it into your monitor.
Scout Lombard has a bigger speakered module, but it doesn't give you all the extra functionality of the mixer and the you know, the distortion and all that kind of stuff.
It's got the mix out too. It's got the 2-input mixer, and you could send your line input in and pull a mix out, and you can still send it to your speaker or to the speaker out. It's yeah, it's important to me that there's always something you use it for, even if you can't.
Something worth checking out. So, and then again, the other thing that I would say is check out the line amp. Line amp is awesome. I use 2 in my system, okay, and I'll explain why. The line amp. Let me share my screen so that people can see what it looks like. So for one, it's all the, you know, the trend right now, because I just saw that recently there was a new 2 HP module company come out, and there's, you know, this is the, and then of course there's also Erica Synths, which is doing 2 HP modules. So 2 HP seems to be the trend right now. But you were there early with the line amp, and what the line amp gives you is it's a buffered multiple, but then when you press the buttons in, they boost the module 3 times. And what that'll give you is you can take like an iPad, send the audio into it, you know, push that button, and it gives you modular level outputs. If you have a Volca Beats, for example, Volca Beats, I send into this thing constantly. I'll send it into there, push the button, and I'm good to go to send it through the rest of my modules. But here's where it gets funky, is if you chain them, if you daisy chain them and you boost them up crazy high, you can get some interesting sounds out of things. And that's what I like to do. So I have 2 of them, and I'll sometimes chain them together and get like crazy high boost just to overdrive filters and that kind of thing. With line level signals, you know what I mean? Like I'll send a Volca Beats and I'll daisy chain it, and then I'll send it into something really hot. But yeah, I mean, if you send any line level signal into it, it'll output modular level clean as can be. So,
yeah. Well, you were the one that said we need a simple module that can do that.
Yeah, and you can do stereo, or you can do split channel, or you can do mono.
So I said it's got to be a multiple too. So
you're like, it can't just sit here not used.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a single function. We can't have that. It's got to be small as possible.
Yep. I don't want to take up a lot of room.
The line amp moves, man. I'll tell you what.
That's one of them things that, like, it's such a simple, basic tool. But if you want to send your iPhone, if you want to send your drum machine, if you want to send your synthesizer, anything in through your modular, but you don't want to waste space when you do it, you could just send that. And if you want to send it mono, the second channel can be just a simple buffered multiple, which that buffered multiple will power like another like 3 or 4 splits off of that before you get a noticeable voltage drop, which is nice, you know? So I use that thing a ton. Like they're just stupid useful, you know? And they're cheap. They're not expensive. You know, it's $89. Grab that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little module. It made it easy to build, so it's man. It's handy.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that's pretty much it. You got anything else you want to say? Is there anything coming up that you're working on?
No, right now I'm just
not that you want to announce.
Yeah, catching up on stuff. Yeah, I don't want to jinx myself. I don't like to.
Fair enough.
Talk about stuff until it's together.
Right on top of people.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
So, by the way, I was working on a new module. Hey, it's going to be released tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of nice too, you know, because you know, you get into that whole vaporware situation and people are like, "Oh, well, when's this coming out? When's this coming out?" And you're stressing out trying to get it done. Like, just get it done right.
Well, that's one of the nice things about this small operation is I can turn stuff around fast. That's you cut my own panels. It doesn't work out fine. Throw them out. Cut some new ones. Change it up.
I mean, that's the CNC machine right behind you, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you cut your own panels right there, then and there, and you do your circuit board designing, and you know, once you get it down and set, you send it off, and you're good to go, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. That's the part that takes the longest is waiting. Well, besides the R&D, it's waiting for the PCB house to return the PCBs. As I could still cut them on CNC, but man, that takes forever. So
you're like, no.
Thank God for that. That's how I got Animodule started. But it's.
I hear you. All right, well, we'll hop off of here, but listen, I want to thank you again for joining us. And again, it's Jesse McCreadie of Animodule.com. Animodule.com is carried in Analog Haven, Perfect Circuit Audio. Who else are you out?
Foxtone's carrying me right now.
Foxtone's got you, yeah.
In out.
Control Voltage have you?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Well, then
No.
everybody tell Control Voltage to get some Animodule in, and you know, yeah, and Memi Antenna and like those New York places. They should be supporting local. So, yeah, I try to say, you know, support local when you can. So, yeah, this is Flux of fluxwithit.com. I'll stop my screen share so you can actually see me. Oh, it's too bright.
You gotta check out fluxwithit.com, man.
Yeah. So, on that same note, I've been doing some massive retooling along with some help from some other people. I'm redoing my entire site and store. I actually have 4, maybe 5 new products that are already done in the can, ready to go. I'm just waiting to launch my new shop, and when it launches, I've got so many new products for everybody that everybody's just going to be like, yeah, I'm tired of this guy because I'm going to just oversaturate. So it's going to be cool. So
Never
if
get
you need
tired.
drum samples and you know, instruments packs and presets, sound design, all that kind of stuff, fluxwithit.com, shop.fluxwithit.com. You can sign up for the newsletter now, and when the shop goes live, you'll get some treats. I'm giving out some free stuff, so you might want to sign up now. So anyway, this is the Synth Summit Show. This has been episode 12 with Animodule, Jesse McCreadie, and stay tuned for the next show. Thanks for watching and all that good stuff.
Thanks so much for having me, Flux. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man, Jesse. I look forward to seeing the next thing that you come out with too. So, you know.
Me too.